When I was younger, around 12, my dad moved into a house. Now, this house always gives me weird vibes. I constantly felt like I was being watched. I couldn't sleep with my door open or without the TV on. Now, this is going to be two separate stories put into one. The first experience I had was around 2 a.m. I was in the living room watching TV. It was the weekend, so I was living up to my bedtime. Now, the layout of my house was slightly weird, and the living room was dead center in the house, surrounded by dark hallways and rooms. I started hearing noises in the kitchen, but thought nothing of it because we had dogs. A couple minutes go by, and I can faintly hear my parents in their bedroom doing stuff. Gross, I know. They were being loud, so I went to turn to look in the direction of their room. I was sitting with my back to the hallway, and as I'm turning clear as day, I hear a child's voice in my ear say, "Don't turn around." I froze in place, absolutely paralyzed with fear. Then I felt a tug on my hair. I promptly jumped up and turned on every light in my house as fast as I could. I didn't hear anything for the rest of the night, but needless to say, I didn't go to sleep until the sun was up. Fast forward to a couple months later. It's Christmas Eve. Me and my siblings were sent to bed to prepare for Santa to drop the presents off. It was around midnight, and I was laying in bed watching TV. I was too excited about presents to sleep. I saw something out of the corner of my eye and looked over at my closed door. As I looked over, I saw a bright blue mist figure float through my door. It was glowing, but not enough to light up my room. I watched as it floated from my door and through my closed closet door. I was once again absolutely shocked. I covered up my head with the blanket for a couple minutes until I felt better. I then laid on my side facing the other side of my bed. The blanket took the shape of someone lying next to me. I laid there and watched as the blanket moved as if someone was breathing. This went on for a couple minutes, and then suddenly the blanket laid flat on the bed again. This all happened 12 years ago, and at the time I told myself I was just imagining things. However, the older I got, the more I'm convinced that something was up with that house. When I talked to my dad about it, he told me some stories they had about hearing a little boy when no one was there. I've done research on the house and never found anything. However, as we moved out, we found handprints made in the concrete on the driveway. 2 sets of child's handprints with 1978 written underneath. Me and a couple of my friends decided to go out and eat dinner together to celebrate the end of term 1. I'm from Australia. My buddy wanted to use the bathroom and asked if I could come in case anything happened. I said sure, and we went outside of the restaurant to the bathroom. I waited outside while he went in to do his business. I was standing there waiting for what seemed like a while, so I decided to go inside the bathroom and see what was the hold-up. However, when I went in, the bathroom was completely empty. There was nobody in sight. I went and checked all the stalls and urinals. There's 1 stall and 3 urinals in that bathroom, and there was nobody to be seen. I thought that maybe he had somehow gone out without letting me know, so I decided to call him and ask him why he did that. He didn't pick up. I began walking back to the restaurant. Then I looked back and saw him exiting the bathroom. I was so confused and asked him how he pulled it off. He was very confused about what I was talking about and said I must have been tripping. We proceeded to have a long discussion, and he insisted he was peeing in the urinal and that I must have gone into the women's bathroom. I denied this and said it definitely went past urinals and went into the men's bathroom. We went back to the restaurant, and my buddy told everyone I must have been doing drugs and about what just happened. There was no way he or I could have been in the women's bathroom, as I could hear women chatting in there, and if either of us went in, we would have been found out and kicked out. There are no hiding spots in the bathroom. I literally have no clue what happened. So I know people talk about deja vu a lot, and people love to explain it away with science, like your brain is tricking you because insert logical reason here. You just feel like this scenario has happened before, but it hasn't actually happened yet. I do agree with this to an extent. All of my deja vus initially occur in my dreams when I'm fully asleep and unconscious. When it happens again in reality, I always stop and think about it. But I dismiss it because it most likely is just my mind, recreating a sense of familiarity. I always try to find simple, logical reasons for unexplained things, because not everything strange has to be paranormal. However, I had this one deja vu moment where I can't explain. It's nothing spooky, just strange. Hear me out. I was 14 to 15 at the time. I was visiting my sister's boyfriend family in their vacation home. I was having a lot of trouble sleeping at the time because it was just really hot, humid, and I was uncomfortable as hell. I would only get like 3 hours of sleep a night and I'd never go into a deep sleep. One morning, I woke up, but I didn't fully wake up. My eyes were half open and I was just staring at the wall in front of me, but it felt like I was in a trance. My brain wasn't registering that I was unconscious. I was in a state between being asleep and awake. I can't explain it well, and that's the first and last time that's happened to me. I imagine this is what the beginning of lucid dreaming feels like, if I had the ability to lucid dream. So I'm staring at the wall and a picture of a little girl pops up in front of me, just floating on the blank space of the wall. I've never seen this little girl before in my life. She's white, has blonde hair, is wearing a black and red uniform, black blazer with buttons on top, red skirt on bottom, and has a star hairpin in her hair. She has a super distinct red birthmark on the left side of her face. In my dream, I'm confused because I've never seen this girl before and I'm wondering who she is. After, I fully wake up and I actively think about what I just dreamed about. I remember everything and I write down what she looks like on the notepad in my phone, jotting down everything I mentioned in this post in case I forgot. The whole day I'm thinking about her. Later that night, my sister's boyfriend's daughter, who's the same age as me, is showing me her school yearbook. She flips through several pages and I see that little girl's picture. That same exact picture I saw that morning in my dream. The red and black uniform is her school uniform and she's in the 2nd grade. The hairpin and the birthmark are all there. I'm super freaked out and I started to tell her about it. She's obviously very confused and skeptical, so I show her the notepad on my phone and she's like, "How do you know her?" I said I don't, and I saw her in my dream. So understandably, she's creeped out, doesn't believe me, and I'm very sure she thinks I'm a weirdo. My family is different. We were raised Christian, but a lot of the family did witchcraft. Not your typical witchcraft. Most of us either followed into it or put that aside. I believe in things that most don't, but I don't practice anything. My brother, on the other hand, went into it hard. With that being said, so I must have been like 23 or 24. I was living with my brother and grandma. My brother, at the time, would leave the house and not come back for days. He had a massive DVD collection. When I was bored, I would either pick his door, or if the key was available, I would use that. On this day, the key was there. So I went in and grabbed a bunch of DVDs and locked the door, because I didn't want him knowing I was in there. I watched like 2 movies, smoked some, and then got paranoid. So I went to place the movies back in his room. I closed the door, locked the door. When I locked the door, I heard a sound and was like, what the fuck? So I unlocked the door and the door slammed into the closet doors. The way the room was, the door opens to the left. On the right of the door was his double door closet. So if the closet doors are open, he can't get out of the room. Being blazed, I thought maybe something fell in the closet. So I pushed one closet door closed and made my way in. I looked around and realized there was nothing. I was like, whatever, close the closet, exit the room, lock the door. I heard the same noise. Thinking I'm just being paranoid, I unlocked the door and once again, the closet doors were open. I push one door closed and make my way in. Looking around, only this time, I felt the coldest shiver ever in my life. I was like, fuck that, and I'm out. Exit the room, lock the door, and that's when I hear the closet door slam against the room door. Not gonna lie, it made me jump. I immediately ran to my grandma and asked if he was there. She replies no. I was like, you sure? She was like, yep. So now I'm like, this motherfucking got playing with my emotions. I unlocked the door, closed the closet door, and went in. I'm like, bruh, stop playing with me. I know you're in here. Nothing. I start looking around. I look under the bed, and so I'm not scared if he jumps out. I yell, ha, muffa. There was nothing. I look behind the bed. Ha, nothing. Behind the curtains, nothing. I'm like, well, this motherfucker in the closet. I open the closet door. Ha, nothing. I move the clothes around. Nothing. I'm now convinced I'm lit, and it's just my imagination. I repeat the process. This time I didn't lock the door. I ran to my Gma, made her out to get out of bed, and took her to this room. I tell her to listen. I lock the door, and the closet doors fly open, slamming against the room door. She's like, what was that? I told her and explained what was happening. She's like, well, he's in there. I push the closet door closed, take her in, and show her the room. She's like, something must have put pressure on the door. We exit the room, I lock it, and it happens again. I'm like, she turns, slaps me in the face and says, keep that kind of shit to yourself, and walks away. I push the closet closed, go in. I'm like, whatever you are, you're not welcomed here. I exit the door, lock the door. This time I hear one closet door open. Curious, I open the door. The closet door furthest from the room door was open. I close it, and that's when his lights turn off. Mind you, this whole time, the lights were on. That scared the bejesus out of me. I turn them on, exit, lock the door. I hear it again. My dumb lit ass goes to look. Closet doors are open. Lights off, I push in, close the closet doors and look in. The room was a lot darker. Almost like you couldn't see anything, even with the light coming from the hall. I turn on the light and run out scared shitless. I leave the door unlocked. Around 11 p.m, my brother comes home. I rush to him and I'm like, you want to see something creepy? He looks at me with this pale face and says no. I'm like, well, you're gonna anyway. I take him to his room and he's like, why is the key in the lock? I come clean and tell him the truth. I tell him to lock the door. He looks at me and says, I don't want to. I squint my eyes, now knowing he knows something. He makes a big fuss but locks the door. We both hear that shit and he starts spilling the beans. He's like some voodoo guy he knows gave him an original Ouija board. He's like, since he got it, he was having nightmares and hearing things. So we left the house for days. I'm like, so you leave it here and don't say shit? He's like, I thought it was in my head. He took it and I thought he left with it. Instead, this motherfucker puts it in another closet that has a skeleton key lock. Don't say shit. Leave the house for another 5 days. He comes home and spends like 3 days in the house. For those 3 days, everyone is hearing a doorknob jiggling, but we don't know where it's coming from. I ask him, yo, you got rid of that shit, right? He turns super slow and says with this stupid look, no, I put it in the small closet. When he says that, we hear the doorknob jiggle harder. So we go to the closet and you can see the doorknob moving. The thing with that closet is that there is no inside doorknob. I'd like to go in there and get rid of it. This is like I'm scared. What if it tries to eat me or take my soul? I'm like, well, if that's your fate, it is what it is. He takes it back to the old voodoo guy. That's when the old voodoo guy tells him that he found that Ouija board in the Amityville house in the late 70s, early 80s. After that day, my brother stopped doing his weird stuff and started going to church. Till this day, every time I talk about it, I feel cold shivers and get goosebumps. I've moved around the States. But I grew up in Hawaii mostly. So it's like, I do believe lots of different parts of Hawaii are very haunted, and especially schools. My middle school would always feel like I'm being followed, or even feel something or someone watching me. I'd never tell anyone or ask anyone if they felt the same. The girls' locker room for PE, physical education, is always feeling something was wrong, and no matter if all the lights were on, it would still feel dark. Every time I'd walk in, I'd want to leave that area. Just something about that locker room was off for me. I'd also heard about the cafeteria being haunted, that sometimes pots and pans would move on its own, but I had no idea if it was true or not. My high school years became worse with the high school I went to. Even before I went to that high school, at one night, I was with my mom out for a drive. I was at least 11, and I saw the bell tower from afar, and it was 10 p.m. And I looked at the tower, and I was 100% I saw a little girl, 7 to 9 maybe of age, and she was in a white dress and long black hair covering her face. It was so creepy. I wondered why there was a little girl at this time, especially at that tower. I thought maybe her parents were worried, but I brushed it off even though it didn't seem right. So years later, when I started school there, I learned that the tower is off limits for some reason, and it's always been off limits for years. And that door leading to the tower is chained up. I did hear some stories about a young girl who hanged herself at the tower. Another story was that she wanted to be alone and was reading a book, and people were reporting her missing. When the people found her, she was hung at the tower, her body lifeless. Another time, I was at my media class. My teacher would say she'd had lots of paranormal experience because she wouldn't have any other explanation for these happenings. She showed a video of a little child's shoe print not going anywhere, and it happened when the auditorium was being fixed and the construction workers put cement in the front and let it dry all night, when the next day there was a footprint of a child. Everyone was clueless why only a child footprint of a shoe, but nowhere it led. Another story my teacher would tell me was about a football coach who was walking to leave for the day, and all of a sudden he felt something was wrong. So he turned around to look, and there were lots of students looked like zombies and walking extremely slow for some reason. And he turned around again, and no one was there. He freaked out and he left. It was around 5 p.m, so from then on, he doesn't stay past 5 p.m. He doesn't believe in ghosts or paranormal things, but that afternoon scared him. One time it was my classmates, my teacher and me. I was in the class early, so there was a random sound like something pop or broke. And it was sound the AC area, and it's a couple of feet off the ground, and there's windows in that area, but no explanation what happened or why. It sounded like that the AC didn't break or turn off. It was just odd. Also, the back door where the black room is for developing photos opens and closes randomly when no one is near it or in that room. One time, my teacher had to call the janitor to help her open the door because the door locked somehow. Another time, the bell rang for first lunch to end and go to class, and the second lunch students to start. Then as I'm walking to class while looking at something in my science book, I accidentally bump into someone's shoulder, and I looked and said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I looked to see who it was I'd bump into, but there was no one. It was weird, but I brushed it off. Then that night as I slept, I had a dream. I saw a tall 6-foot white guy dressed in green military clothes, formal, and I'd say maybe from 1960s area. And he explained that he doesn't understand why he's trapped in my school, or what happened. He said he tried to talk to people for years, but apparently I was the only person to see him and feel him, so he was surprised when he'd bump into my shoulder. I apologise. He told me that since I could see him and he knew and felt I'm a good person, he said he'd always protect me no matter what or where I am. When I woke up, I looked in the mirror and saw a heart-shaped bruise on my cheek. I never really told anyone what happened. I just kept to myself, and my teacher said years and years ago the school was a military hospital, so there was a military with injuries and wounds, and lots of them died, and her classroom is where the supposed morgue was located. Someone from the school had a project, and they went late at night and went into the area where the cafeteria is in the video. You can see a big trash bin being dragged across the cafeteria from one side to another, and they couldn't get in since the doors were locked and chained up to the cafeteria. My other classmate went to a football game, and after she was talking to her friends, and she looked up at the girls' restroom, she saw a shadow of a lady, and the window open and close the window on its own. Then lights in there turn off and on. I freaked her out that she didn't see anyone physically in the restroom. That she saw in the other class's windows nothing. It was all closed and lights off, but that restroom freaked her out. She told her friend she had to go and left. Another thing happened to me. I was filming the talent show with my media group, and I felt something or someone grabbing my butt behind the curtain. I said really stopped it, and I looked and no one was near me. And so I kept filming when it happened again. I was getting upset. I said seriously stopped it. No one was near me to do that. And the people standing further away said it wasn't them. And they didn't see anyone there near me, so I don't know. Just too odd. Weird. I have more experience with ghosts and spirits. If others want to share their stories or experiences with me, I'd be happy to hear. This story takes place in Texas in December 2018. Weeks leading up to this incident, my mom did notice a hand. The hand had a lot of fur and claws at the end of each finger. It looked like a mix between a human hand and a dog paw. My mom saw it was clawing/scratching the window. She went back to sleep and didn't think too much of it, and there was a curtain at the window, so she didn't see anything else that night. A couple of nights later, I woke up randomly. When I woke up, I noticed something with thick fur. I rubbed my eyes to make sure of what I saw. I looked through the spaces of the curtain and saw a werewolf creature 6 to 7 foot tall. I remember it looked like the head of a husky and the fur was thick. The colour of this werewolf was dark grey, brown and red. The werewolf had pointy ears with some white on them and had ice blue colour eyes. I was very intrigued by the werewolf. I didn't feel scared or threatened in any way. I felt the werewolf was curious and had muscles all over the body, had abs and was on its hind legs. It stood up like a human. I did feel I was hypnotised for some reason, and I'm not sure if he saw me. I do say he because I felt it was a he, not a she. Hard to explain. I did feel the werewolf with blue eyes was coming back to see me again. I've never seen him again, but yet I felt like I knew those eyes, like I've seen them somewhere. I know it's strange. Like a week later, I woke up to the howls. In the area I live in, I don't usually hear coyotes or wolves. Then I checked my phone to see that it was 3:30 a.m. I thought it was an odd time to hear howls so deep. The howls were so deep the ground felt it was shaking a little. Then I heard something horrible. I heard a poor dog being torn apart by giant werewolf beasts. There were at least 4 in a pack. They sounded big. The howls kept going. The poor dog kept crying and yelping as it was being eaten. I was too scared to look outside, but it didn't look that close, maybe a mile away. My mum heard the howling and a dog being ripped apart alive and the poor dog crying and yelping. My dad was in a deep sleep. My neighbours heard them too, and my next door neighbours were young people who would drink at parties and go out late, so they were about to leave and open the door, and I heard them scream, and one said go back inside, and I heard another shut the door and lock it up. I'm not sure what scared them, but they don't usually get scared easily. I heard my other neighbour from downstairs talking on the phone saying crazy things happen late at night. He kept saying the stories you hear when you were young just aren't stories, they're real. He said he can't sleep at night. I don't live in the countryside. I live in a mall and stores nearby. There's some spaces between trees and some spaces of land, and I've seen a candle in the areas of the land with fences. Luckily, I've never seen any werewolves, and I've never seen coyotes in the area or any of that. I still hear howls from time to time, but I hear it from miles and miles away. It's weird. I do hear them from far away, I know. I just wanted to share this story because it's something I never expect to happen to to those bloody screams from a poor dog. It's something I don't want to hear again. Some say that while dreaming, we can travel without any time and space limitations, and we can happen to share a peculiar experience with someone with whom we have a strong and close connection, meeting them while being asleep. This is what happened to my mother and I. We always had a special relationship as we always talked about everything. I can say that she probably transmitted me her gift, being able to have different perceptions related to the paranormal world. That's why we happened to meet in a dream more than once, and it was very scary. The first time it happened, it was nothing scary. We were just at the beach, so I'm not going to explain more. The second time, though, we were in our living room. It looked like a normal dream at first, as we were just chatting about unimportant matters. But then I said something out loud which really stuck out. We must pay attention to children's ghosts. I remember seeing a woman's face in my dream after this sentence, right before waking up. During breakfast, I always tell her about what I dream, as it's always something scary or weird anyways. And while I started narrating, her facial expression changed a little bit after I started. She said that she had the same dream, chatting with me in the living room, but instead of hearing my weird and creepy phrase, she saw the woman's face and the one of a child from the 1930s. He had straight hair, set with a row to the side, and he didn't look mean. He just had the typical facial features and clothing of children of those years. She also felt a little pressure on her, right before some sort of grab on the arm, but she was still sleepy, so she brushed it off and fell back to sleep. While talking to each other about the experience, we felt as if someone was watching us, so we no longer brought it up. Thinking about it though, still haunts me. Since I was a child, I always had some kind of perception. I often felt like someone was watching me, as if I wasn't alone in my house, or just perceiving weird energies around me. I was little, so I didn't pay any attention to it. I never told it to my parents, and even if I did, would have been odd. Because the house in which I lived and still live, where what I'm about to tell happened, was new, and it had no history of deaths or murders. When I was around 11, I used to sleep in the same room as my parents. Don't judge. And basically my bed was attached to the opposite wall of theirs. So when I looked at the ceiling, I could see the corner where the walls met. One night, I randomly woke up from my sleep, shifting uncomfortably and feeling a huge sense of fear. I was uneasy as it was very late, past midnight. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw the detailed silhouette of a girl, which was around my age at the time, or even younger, and she was basically floating in the exact corner in front of me. She wore an expensive-looking dress from the 1800s, and she also had a hat in the same style, while her hair was in curls. I could only see the outlines of her figure, and they were white and bluish, and I felt as if I was about to die because of how scared I was. For the same reason I wanted to scream, but I couldn't, and only some seconds later I could run into my parents' bed. For many years I had been reassured because I'd successfully convinced myself that it was a sleep paralysis experience, but two things made me realise that it probably wasn't. First of all, when I climbed in my parents' bed, I turned around for some seconds to check if it was still in the corner, and I can vividly remember that the mysterious girl was in fact still there. But the most important thing was much later discovered that the land on which the house was built previously belonged to a rich family from the 1800s, and they had a daughter who died very young. I'm still afraid sometimes because I still sleep in the same room without my parents, and I often feel as if someone sits on my bed as soon as I lay down. I can literally feel the mattress bending from an unknown weight, and I still feel something watching me when I'm by myself. When we first heard of this trend, We saw it as a way to try something new, to explore the boring and strange neighbourhood in which I live, with the hope to see an unforgettable and creepy happening. What we saw, I'm sure, could definitely be described that way. It was dark. It was around 11 p.m. We were spent after trying to find something cool with the Randonauts app. We had tried to manifest something scary, an abandoned building or an entity, but the randomly generated points would always lead us to the countryside, and even trying to reach them was impossible as they were private properties. After some hours, we decided to surrender, and just to walk around my house as we had never really explored those old streets. And we found a weird and chained gate that blocked the way to a huge, seemingly abandoned house. There was a couch in front of the door, on which a black cat was comfortably sitting. And there was a dim light that came from a window that made it look as if there was someone inside. Near the couch, there were some objects from the 50s, like a basketball basket covered in rust. The atmosphere was spooky and there were bats flying around, but we decided to keep walking until we found something that looked like a dead-end street. A street lamp started working at once, making 3 gates visible. The first gate was right at the end of the small road, the second one was on the left, and the third one, the most important one, was on the right. I saw another black cat behind the first gate, but I turned around, and after a little bit, I looked back at the gate. As soon as I did that, I literally jumped after seeing a black sheet on the ground, which was basically being dragged, but it quickly disappeared. I asked my friends to leave, as we had previously seen a weird shadow, who could have been someone, behind some bushes, and it was giving me anxiety. But we decided to stay and check behind the third gate. There was something strange. It was sitting against the wall, as if it was at rest, and it seemed like it was holding a huge stick, even though no hands were visible. Now that I think about it, it may have looked like the Grim Reaper's sickle. A little far from it there was an old chair, and a drawing resembling a face appeared right on the wall. It was smiling and it had eyes, a nose and a curved drawn line which represents a smiling mouth. There was some sort of noise close to it, on the same wall, and a house which was behind it had a 5-pointed star on the balcony. After seeing this, I really felt as if we were in the wrong place. I started panicking and convinced everyone to leave. And we got back home safe, but still with many questions regarding what we saw. These questions had led us to go back to the creepy street some days later. We thought about going in there in the daylight, but somehow we ended there even later than 11 p.m, and we met a different scenery. A huge white van was resting in the exact same place where we had seen the hooded man, and the drawing on the wall wasn't there anymore. We still can't explain what we saw, and probably we never will, but it's a mystery that will probably haunt us forever. After a long car trip at night, I and 2 other friends decided to spend the night at my grandmother and grandfather's house, because it was around 2 a.m. and we couldn't drive anymore. Since neither my grandmother or grandfather were home, we thought it fit perfectly, and because it was halfway to our destination. For some reason, we all felt unusually happy during the whole evening. Everything felt easy and good. At that time in my life, it was unusual for me to feel good, because it was a hard time in my life. I had very destructive life patterns marked by a criminal lifestyle. Now to the event. It was a crystal clear Swedish winter night with a beautiful night sky. So we decided to sit on their large terrace for a while and talk and look out over the big lake. After a while into the conversation, our eyes were drawn to the sky, because as the sky began to change colour to a brighter blue colour, the sky became brighter and brighter in a very beautiful shade. Finally, an outline of a church window came up in the sky with an extremely beautiful blue harmonious colour. The most beautiful colour I've seen in my entire life. Now to the big one. At the point in the sky where the contour of a church window was located, there was a large contour of an angel that flew past in the church window itself. The figure in the window seemed to be wearing some kind of dress, and it was huge. Me and my two friends froze and our body hair stood straight up. After we observed the phenomenon, we felt extreme love, happiness, euphoria and harmony. None of us really understood what was happening, but we felt extremely happy until we buzzed a few hours later, around 3:30 a.m. It was the sickest thing I've been through in my 22-year-long life. I hope someone else gets to experience what I did. I've become 100% more religious after the event. Today, I'm free from the destructive pattern of my life, and I feel that this was the beginning of brighter times for me. Today, I'm a person who wants to help others. First, I'd like to establish some context. I'm not exactly a believer in the paranormal, but I try to keep an open mind. Really, I kind of want to experience something that makes me believe, but until it happens, I remain agnostic on the subject. That isn't to say I haven't had some experiences that fall into the realm of the unknown, though. The house that I grew up in was built 2 years before I was born, so late 80s. My parents were the first occupants. The plot it was built on was just some northern New England farmland, bordering some woods. No Native American burial grounds or anything, as far as I know. The unexplainable experiences I had both could be explained as auditory hallucinations. If they were, the good Lord, did they sound real? I'll start with the more benign and less freaky of the two events. I was probably about 12 years old, staying up on a weekend playing video games and watching Newgrounds cartoons on my dad's computer. It was probably around 10 p.m. I believe specifically I was playing StarCraft, and while I went about cheesing my opponents with Nidus Canals and Hydralisks, I was singing a song in my head. Kind of embarrassing, but I'm pretty sure it was Limp Bizkit. Anyway, I'm reciting the song in my head when suddenly I hear a young female voice very clearly saying, "I know what you're singing." Like, I could hear the song in my head, but my ears actually heard this young woman's voice. It's not the voice of my mother or sister, totally unfamiliar. I immediately look around and start freaking the fuck out. My parents were asleep, my sister off to college. I looked around the house, even went outside to see if there were any signs someone was there. Nope, nothing. I heard this voice clear as day and never found the source. The second instance was much more menacing. I can't remember the exact details, but the circumstances were similar. I believe this was a few years later. I was probably about 14 or 15. I believe my parents were away for one reason or another, and my sister's still off to college. So I'm home alone this time. Another late night of gaming, and I finally decide to go to sleep. I fall asleep, but wake up not long after to go pee. When I got back into my room, I started hearing the sound of heavy breathing. It started out somewhat faint, so I held my breath to try to hear it better and make sure it wasn't just me breathing weirdly without realizing. It gradually, over about 20 seconds, gets louder and louder. I'm looking around the room, trying to figure out where it's coming from. While it gets so loud, it really sounds like someone is right behind me, and they're breathing deeply and with rage. It felt fucking terrifying, and it was loud. This went on for probably a minute or two before it eventually stopped. Scared the absolute shit out of me and felt very clearly malevolent, whatever it was. Okay, so I was around 15 at the time. I was super into demons and the occult as a teen. My siblings and I were staying at my nana's house. It was in the middle of summer, so we had spent the day in the creek. That night, we went to my uncle's house. He lived in an old farmhouse on the property. She had to work the next day, so we went there to be noisy kids. He was dating some woman who had 2 kids that were around the same age as my brother and sister. At some point in the night, we went to Walmart to buy a shitload of snacks and hit the $1 DVD bin for some classic horror movies. We're all high on sugar and 90 bagel bites, telling ghost stories. Our horror movies sucked. At some point, I bring up the fact that I know how to make Ouija boards and use them to talk with spirits. My uncle, this 6'4", 250-pound bastard of a man, eggs us on. So I made a Ouija board out of a bagel bite box and magic markers. We use a shot glass with maybe Mississippi or Alabama on it. I just remember the Dixie flag on the side of it. Mistakes 1 and 2. We didn't have a candle, so we used a disco ball. You know, the ones that have a lot of coloured dots and they spin around. Not the mirror ball type. Us girls start circling the board with the glass, inviting something to join us. A few moments pass, long enough for us all to get bored. Suddenly, the glass jerks to hello and our fingers all slip off. Everyone laughed and were told to quit messing around. My uncle just kind of laughs and asks for a name. The glass spells out Ross. Full disclosure, all of the events are true, but I don't remember its real name. I'm just guessing for the sake of storytelling, but I remember it was short. Only 4 or 5 letters and a classic men's name. My uncle fussed at us, telling us to quit messing around, but Ross was the name of the guy who built the farm. Ross would also happen to be a distant relative. We didn't know that. I mean, sure, we could have heard the name in passing. We put our fingers back on the glass. The girl is too scared to keep going, but my sister and I do. We put our hands back on the glass and circle the board. Our hands get cold to the point my joints are starting to hurt. I also feel dread and the temperature in the room is dropping, despite only using a small window AC, and it's the middle of Kentucky summer. I ask if it's good or evil. It jerks to E before our fingers are forced off. Everyone is uneasy at this point. My uncle's girlfriend kinda starts to freak out and tells us to stop. I tell her we have to say goodbye. She ends up getting mad and going to bed. So like any teens, we keep going. My sister and I pick up the shot glass, making circles in the opposite direction. We tell Ross we're done talking and thanking him for his time. We all then do a small ritual claiming no evil and try to summon a new spirit. This time, asking for a good spirit. After circling some time, we eventually get another hello. When we ask this spirit what its name is, it spells out Ross. We get a little angry and tell Ross to leave. I know my voice was shaking when I told him we were scared, and he was unwelcome. The disco ball starts spinning like someone has their hand on top. Only the base is spinning slowly, winding the cord until it unplugged itself. We all just kind of watched dumbfounded. My uncle immediately stands up and says it's time to go outside for a smoke break. There's a door in the living room that starts shaking like someone is pounding on it. That door is only accessible from the living room. A trailer was placed next to the house to give it extra rooms and a bathroom. So the door is blocked off on the side, whatever is trying to come through. We scramble out. My uncle first and me last. On my way out, something grabbed my ponytail. My sister said something pulled it straight up. While outside, we tried to burn the board. This was just cardboard that frozen food came in and a Sharpie marker. My uncle is actively trying, but it won't light or stay lit. He decides to douse it in gas and toss it in the burn barrel. It takes an uncomfortable amount of time to burn. I remember watching it after the initial whoosh from the gas. Goodbye was the last corner to burn. My nana had a couple of farm dogs. They were friendly enough to us, but were aggressive and hated strangers. These dogs were losing their minds, barking at the house. After that, we were all a bit scared. Us kids go to my nana's house. Us girls sleep in the bed and the boys sleep on an air mattress on the floor. The girl ended up wetting the bed. At breakfast, we all talked about having nightmares. They were different, but we all agreed our dreams had fire. Mine was in a burning bed that I couldn't escape. My nana freaked out when she heard what she did. She called the priest and had holy water and oils within an hour. She took us to the creek and did a mock baptism with the oils and water while chewing us out. Then she took crosses to my uncle's house, putting them on both doors and his bedroom door. We went back to my nana's a lot. We'd see my uncle every time too, since he lived 300 feet from my nana. His house always felt cold and unwelcoming. Maybe 4 to 6 months pass. My nana's getting ready to feed all her animals and notices my uncle's house on fire. Luckily, he survived. His bedroom was the last to catch. The fire department took a long time to get there and the house was lost. I think they said it was a cigarette he dropped that started it all in the living room. My mum bought a house when I was in second grade. It was built in 1856 or 1857, I'm not entirely sure. The guy who built it was a prominent doctor. He had a few kids. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I know over the years a couple of people died there, mostly him and his kids. But we got the house because the woman living there, her sister died and she wanted to move into a nursing home. The house wasn't used to treat patients as far as I know. There was a hospital built maybe 80 yards from us, where I'm fairly sure he did most of his work. I know that place is very haunted, but nothing malicious as far as I know. Anyways, I feel like that's enough background about the house. We lived there in the early 2000s. I was 6 or 7, and we moved out when I was 13. We didn't live there for a very long time. The house just seemed to be bad luck. We had a dog named Snowball. He was an American Eskimo dog, 20 pounds, fluffy and white as snow. He would just stare in dark corners a lot, as would my cat. I'd hear my mom call for me a lot, but when I went to look for her, she wasn't home from work yet, or hadn't called for me. A few times we'd be in the kitchen or living room, and we'd hear something digging around my shoeboxes full of Polly Pockets. My bedroom was directly above the living room, and the floor was thin. When we'd go upstairs to look for the cat or dog, they were usually there in the living room with us. The cat liked to stay under the couch, but when we would investigate, all my dolls and accessories would be thrown about my room and the door was closed. Snowball liked to chew on my dolls as he had a gum disease, and I guess it felt good. But he really didn't like being alone, and his favourite spot was on the green couch where he could look out and watch the street. He was also old and only went upstairs when it was cold, and we would all sleep in one room. He liked the theatre, as did my cat. She was often very close to us. She liked the spot on the red couch where she would watch TV. None of the pets liked going upstairs unless we were there. I spent a lot of my time outside, but I also liked to sit in the office and I would play Neopets, RuneScape, and watch videos on various sites. I feel like someone was watching me all the time. I'd turn around and I was alone. Sometimes when I was outside, I knew my mum was still at work. But in her bedroom window, I'd see a man looking down at me. I don't remember being afraid of him, just mind used to seeing him. Mum always said it was just Dr. Green. I'd wave to him and he would just vanish. One night I woke up and someone was sitting on my bed and it was freezing as they were pulling my blanket down. I woke up mad, then panicked, because pulling at my blanket was the man in the window. And I could smell it. Something was burning. I woke my mum up and we found that the microwave was shorting out and had burnt through the cable and was on the verge of catching fire. After that, I made my grandma take me to his grave and I'd leave flowers for him all the time. Dr. Green was a nice ghost. He would just appear and he woke me that one time. Then there was Luke. Luke was malicious. He terrorised the pets. It's why they wouldn't really go upstairs. He always appeared in dark corners and I could never bring myself to walk past him. It felt like if I did, something bad would happen. He was more active too. Cabinets would fly open, things would fall off shelves, and he would throw things at us. In the dead of night, you could hear heavy boots slowly climb the stairs. Sometimes the TV would randomly flip channels. You would hear groans, and he actually attacked us. I regularly had nightmares and would wake up with strange bruises, cuts, and scratch marks. This was also happening to my mom. We know his name was Luke because my mom used to record QVC and this sewing channel on the VCR. I think it was QVC and they were doing some craft thing, but they asked the caller what their name was and very clearly, in a masculine voice, someone said Luke. Then the woman who was live on the show goes on to say her name and go on about the product. We're only guessing that the friendly ghost was Dr. Green, as the man always appeared in similar clothing to the photos we had of him. Very nice suits and a hat. Luke was dressed in ratty-looking clothing and he wore huge boots with spurs. I can still hear the boots clanging up those squeaky steps. Lastly, there was the ghost dog. I love animals, but I hated this dog. It was huge, black, and made me feel sick to my stomach when it would appear. It also appeared everywhere. Outside, the carport, downstairs, upstairs, and especially the cellar. I could hear its toenails clack on the hardwood, and I would hide under my blankets. The hair on my arms and neck would raise, and I could hear it sniffing me. It makes my skin crawl to think about that dog. If you looked at it, it would growl and vanish. But I only saw it maybe twice. I heard it all the time, though. I'd also have nightmares about this huge black dog following me around. It was a reoccurring dream that scared me so much as a kid. I'd be in the yard and there was a creek that ran through our yard. It went under the road and there were those huge steel cylinders that let the water pass. I could crouch and walk through them. But I'd see the dog there and it was guarding what looked like a kid's body. It would immediately wake me up. I never thought to look up and see if a kid had died there. I was a kid and it scared me to think about it, but I still see that dream vividly. I own a big black lab Great Dane mix, and sometimes it gives me flashbacks to that dog. I could go on and on about odd things that happened. More happened to my mom, and she has weird pictures, videos, and even called a priest to cleanse the house, but I don't think it ever helped. It may have, but the people who live there now have fixed up the house a lot. I've been tempted to knock on the door and ask them, but I feel like that would be weird. I drive past the house every time I go visit my grandparents. Also, stepping back on the property makes me feel uneasy. When we were moving out, I was packing my things and something knocked over my corkboard and I was frustrated as it broke it. I told whatever it was to leave me alone, that I was leaving. Then I heard something behind me clearly say, "If you come back, I'll kill you." I don't want to take my chances with the paranormal. With a threat like that, I don't want to mess with it, especially as this was a voice that was very different from Luke's. It hissed, made me feel sick, and made the room very cold as well. So I moved into my current house around a year ago, after falling out with my previous roommates. It's a tiny house, built probably around 1922, and you can tell. It's had little renovations since then. A lot of it needs work, but it's really cozy. My fiancée and I have been here for close to a year now. Since moving in, we've experienced paranormal activity that resembles something of a cat, which is hilarious to us. And we're not alone in this. We've actually had more than a few people confirm to us that they've either seen said cat or have felt the presence of one. Going back to the first few experiences we had, it would just be seeing a little black ball dart around corners or even up the stairs. One day, my fiancé and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. From my living room, the dining room is to the right if you're sitting on the couch and you can see clearly into it. So we're chilling after a long day of deep cleaning the house, and there was a paper towel roll just sitting in the middle of the table, standing straight up. As we're watching TV, the roll just flies off the table. Well, not flies, more like just fell, which was weird because it was directly in the middle of the table and nowhere even close to the edge. So it was more like batted off. I get up, pick it up, put it back where it was and go back to what I was doing. I don't think anything of it. Some 10 minutes later, it happens again. So now I'm wondering what's happened. I'm thinking, was it wind? So I start crossing off things it could have been. It's the dead of summer. So is the window unit AC on? No. Ceiling fan? No. Nothing. There was no reason for it to just be falling on the floor. Regardless, I shrug it off as just maybe it was some weird gravity phenomenon, or maybe the simulation of life is glitching. Later that week, we had a friend over. He's never really been over and we never told him about the experiences my fiancée and I had. Soon as he walks in the door, he kind of does this weird sidestep/step over maneuver. So I ask, what was that? And he goes, I thought I was going to step on an animal for some reason. And of course, there was nothing there. A couple hours later, my fiancée and I and our friend are eating dinner at the table, and an empty grocery bag in the kitchen falls from the bag of bags. Everyone else does this, right? Do y'all save bags? And it just kind of sits there for a minute, deflated. Then it just opens up. Like something crawled in it. and the top starts batting around unnaturally like it's being played with. We all hear this and watch it happen for a few seconds, and then the bag returns to its deflated state. And we're all just like, what was that about? Because again, it didn't look like wind. Wind would have made the bag move around the kitchen more. So we now tell him about our previous experience, and we all come to the conclusion that it's most likely a cat. So we settle on the most cliche name ever. We name it Catspa. I spend a few minutes making fun of the name and ridiculing its antics. And later that night, around 4 a.m.ish, I woke up to the sound of something moving on my bedside table. I brushed it off as just sleep delirium and tried to go back to sleep. Then I just feel the gentlest whack on my head, like a paw swatting at me. Then I hear something jump on the floor and skitter down the stairs. This time I jump up, turn on the light and investigate. Nothing. Not a single animal in the house. I know for sure it wasn't a house or anything. I exclaim, "Alright, you win. You can stay." Another time we had a few friends over, and someone who we didn't know who'd shown up with another friend asked my fiancée, "Hey, can I meet your cat?" And of course we tell her the whole shebang, and she goes, "Huh? I thought you guys had a cat. I saw it run up the stairs." And we're just kind of like, yeah, it does that. So now, we just have a ghost cat. And whenever I give it a lot of shit for being a shithead, one of our decorative fake cactuses will just fall from one of the shelves for no reason. But on good days, we feel a gentle brush up against our legs when we're sitting on the couch, and an overall sense of comfort from the house. We've never felt anything malicious or had any other bad experiences living here, just the cat. According to our landlady, the previous tenants had a lot of pets. It's entirely possible one of them passed and their soul just stuck around. I'm not complaining. The next time it swats my head in my sleep, I'm getting the ghost cat spray bottle. This experience happened to me around a year ago. I had just moved into a new apartment with a few roommates. We'd been there about a month or two at most at this point. I had just come home from an excruciatingly taxing day at work. I walked through the door to the apartment and realised that nobody was home. Awesome, I thought. I dropped all my stuff by the door, pet the cat, grabbed a towel, and got into the shower. It was one of those days where you just kind of sit down in the shower and just let the water pelt you. Just to let the muscles relax a bit. I was in the shower for not more than 5 minutes before I heard a loud bang on the bathroom door, followed by the jiggling of the doorknob. Naturally, I'm shocked. The bang was loud enough to sound like a gunshot went off. It was too loud to be the pipes. It sounded like someone tried to kick down the door. I'm thinking, did someone break in? And I then made an executive decision. If I'm going down, I'll go down disorienting them. So I jump out of the shower and rip open the door while unclothed, and there's nobody. Not a single person was there. I grab my towel and I start checking the rooms, windows and doors. Still nobody home. All the doors locked, all windows still intact. Hell, even the cat was still asleep. I reluctantly go back to the bathroom to finish my shower and don't think anything of it. Later that night, I'm just chilling in my room. Still nobody home. I left my door open for the cat just in case it wanted to come hang out in my room. My roommate's room was almost directly outside of mine to the right, and I heard the cat in the hallway, just hissing and angrily meowing at their room. The door was closed, so I'm thinking, what the hell could she possibly be meowing at? I walk up to the Esper and I say, "What's wrong, sweetie?" There's nobody in there. And as soon as I say those words, something falls and clatters onto their bedroom floor and the cat bolts away. Just in case someone had gotten home without my knowledge, I knock on their bedroom door. I get no answer. I peek into their room and there's a bunch of CDs on the floor, seemingly ripped off their disc rack. I pick them up and put them back and leave the room. I leave the door open this time, just to make sure I'm not being crazy if it happens again. My fiancée stopped by not an hour later, after she'd just gotten off of work. We were chilling in the living room, just watching TV and talking. From the way the apartment was set up, if you're sitting on the couch, to the left you can see all the way down the hallway and into my roommate's room if they had their door open, which it was for now. My fiancée got a sudden chill, and to my left, I can just see out the corner of my eye, an all-black silhouette of a man just standing in the doorway. I turn to look at him, and he walks away to the right, where their closet is. I ran to their bedroom and slammed their door shut. I look at my fiancée and say, "Did you see that too?" She nods her head with a scared look on her face. And I tell her we're just going to leave for a while. We grab our stuff and head out. I call my roommates later and ask them if they've ever experienced any weird stuff since we moved in. They told me that sometimes while I'm at work, they hear people talking in my room, even though nobody's there. Needless to say, I'm happy I don't live there anymore. My mother and 2 older brothers would visit my auntie and 3 cousins around Christmas. The whole family would get together too. Uncles, aunties, you name it. Anyway, they lived up near Inverness in Scotland, in a place called the Black Isle. It's actually in a place called Cromarty, but Inverness is more well known, so I'll say that. The Black Isle was said to be used back in the day, as a place where witches would meet up on Halloween and perform satanic rituals. Animal sacrifices, that sort of thing. Whether or not that's true is another story. I'll get to the story now. We all rented out a holiday home just down the road from my cousin's house. It had multiple bedrooms in it, so perfect for a lot of guests. Me, one of my older brothers and his friend from Africa were all staying in one room. They were fast asleep, but I was not. I woke suddenly and I didn't know why. I scanned the room with my bleary eyes. It was very dark. I couldn't hear anything but the snores from my brother and his friend. The door to the room slowly opened with a creak, I swear to God. I froze with fear. I didn't see anything enter through it. But as I tried to scan my eyes around the room, I started to see shadow-like figures pulsating and hovering around the 2 adjacent beds. Hovering and pulsating over my brother and his friend. There must have been at least 3 of these figures. The 3rd one stood over my bed, although this apparition didn't have any human-like features, except for maybe the shape of something human. I could feel like it was staring right at me. I decided then the only course of action was to turn over to face the wall and go to sleep. The morning after, I told my experiences to a few of my family members, and they joked that it might be witches that performed those rituals in the past, and generally didn't believe me. Except one person, my brother's girlfriend. She told me she experienced something as well. She was only sleeping next door, and she told me she felt like someone sat down on the end of her bed at night, and said she could feel the weight of someone on her legs, but nothing was there. Very frightened by this, I decided to read the guest book to see if anyone else reported anything else weird and unusual, but nothing of the sort was there. I'll never forget what I saw that night, and if you're ever up near the Black Isle or stay in the same holiday home I did, just be aware of any strange figures entering your room at night. I want to preface this by saying the house itself is only about 15 years old. I'm not very versed on haunting, so I don't know if it could be the area beforehand that was haunted, or a spirit being attached to the place. I digress. I'll list all that I can remember. Probably the most significant was my father hearing the voice of his deceased friend shout up to him from downstairs. He said he heard him clear as day and walked down expecting to see him. This happened not long after we moved in, 15 years ago. He also heard people generally speaking in the other room. He, my sister and I have all heard footsteps upstairs that sounds like kids' ones, light and running around. My siblings sometimes visit, so you would think it was them if they were here, but I live alone most of the time. I felt someone tap my shoulder while I was eating, turned around to expect to see someone, and then realised I'm still alone in the house. I heard what sounded like a whisper screaming in my ear once, as I was half asleep in the morning. I thought this could have just been high-pitched wind, but even last night I heard what sounded like a woman's voice in my ear, before I sleep, say something unintelligible. My younger sibling says she gets bad vibes from the house and doesn't like sleeping alone when she's here. I've heard things move in the kitchen. Recently, my father walked through the front door, expecting mail, and there was nothing. He said he heard someone slip a package through the letterbox and it hit the ground. I was woken up by a loud bang downstairs one morning. I went downstairs with a massive night watchman torch, expecting someone to be there, but there was nothing. This one could perhaps be down to a window being open upstairs, but still no idea what could have caused the bang. Even this morning, I was woken up by the sound of the doorbell, but it was too early for the postman. I shrugged it off and went back to sleep.